I will say too, once the book is published, it doesn't become mine anymore, right? It's not my book anymore. It's out in the universe. It's for anyone else to consume. And that's been a kind of a surprise to see my own, like, oh, I can detach from this and see it as like kind of objective. And I see, oh, this is, so when I can step back and see that, at the same time, I will sit down and reread some of these stories, some of these essays, and I'm weeping because I'm standing with my mom having a conversation again, or I'm sitting with my dad, having a drink. And, so there's something really beautiful that's preserved in there just for me that, other people maybe wouldn't pick up on. But yeah, I think that's a big piece of it for me. It gives me, it's that door of, I don't think it's some sort of magical connection to the beyond, but for me, this is what I've been able to preserve and I can keep coming back to, and that's a beautiful way to live with memories.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter, the podcast where we have amazing authors on the show, and I'm really been looking forward to this conversation. We met already, Bill and I, and had a little pre-chat. I walked away from this going, this is going to be a great interview, and just so you know, behind the scenes, we do talk and we do plan for every episode. So Bill and I have already had a conversation, and you're in for a treat today. I'm really excited to have Bill on the show. Bill, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. So glad to have you here.
Thanks, Dave. I'm very happy to be here.
Excellent. Tell everybody, Bill, where are you in this big world of ours?
It's a big world, isn't it? I am in Seattle, Washington, in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
And you love it there?
I do. I've been in Seattle proper for it's about to be 6 years, and I was in Tacoma for 4 years before that. But previously, I'd lived on the East Coast in several places. But I'm a Chicagoan at heart. So and the longer I'm away from Chicago, the stronger my accent from Chicago gets. I don't know how that happened, but it does. But I love Seattle. If I knew that summer could be like this, I would never have stayed on the East Coast for as long as I did. So I'm very happy to have landed here. It's a great place.
I know somebody in Chicago, and they were schooling me about hot dog toppings, which I had no idea that there was a rule.
Oh, God. You don't put ketchup on your hot dog, right? Do you?
See? Why? Yes. Like, why not? I don't understand. What am I missing here?
I have no idea what that origin is. And I used to be a tour guide in Chicago. When I was in college, I did architectural and historical tours in the city. And it was always kind of a running joke. You don't put ketchup on a hot dog. Of course not. I have no idea where that came from. I don't know what the origin is. There must be, I'm sure there are multiple apocryphal stories about, somebody who set in motion the great anti-ketchup campaign. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm on a mission to bring ketchup back to Chicago.
Yeah, good luck.
That's my campaign. There's only me so far signed up. I'm not going to let this die, Bill. I'm going to work on this. So there you go. Are there ketchup allowed on hot dogs where you are now? Is that okay?
Yes. Yeah, I think
it is.
Seattle has an interesting. A Seattle dog is interesting too. I think it's cream cheese and ketchup, which is an equally bizarre combination to me.
Cream cheese.
I know. I don't know whose idea that was, but yeah, okay. I'm not a hot dog eater anyway, so it doesn't really impact my life anymore.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, there we go. We got that all cleared up. So, yeah, if you go to Chicago and you are unaware and you order just ketchup on your hot dog, you might be escorted out of the city. I don't know. It might happen.
Yeah, wear a helmet before you put your order in at the Wiener Circle. Trust me.
I love it. Okay, well, we've totally gone off topic, which is I love. Bill, this is a podcast where we try to serve two people. I have authors in mind and I have readers, which I love to introduce them to you as a writer. For the authors that are listening, one thing I love to do is kind of pick your brain a little bit and get some encouragement for the authors that are listening. These authors are brand new to this journey of becoming an author. You've got there. You've got a book in the world. You are published. It's great. Like, I'm here to celebrate you, but in the process of writing, you've learned something. And I know the authors listening would love to hear your insight and what helped you along this journey. Was there somebody in your corner kind of giving you advice on writing? How did you navigate from an idea to being a published author?
I did not set out to write a book. That was never the goal. That was never the
There's
goal
the
for me.
okay.
In 2019, I left my career in education behind. I'd been a teacher, high school teacher, and campus minister, and then I was a program leader and administrator. Finally, I was a middle school principal. The job that I had been working for my whole life, and I was so excited, and it was great. But 2 days before the first day of school, as my first full school year as a middle school principal, my mom died after a long illness. And I knew it was coming, but it did. I like to joke that my mom had excellent timing. She always knew how to set priorities. And so here I'm excited for my big first day as a middle school principal, and then I get the call that mom has died, and I thought, oh well, okay, well she knows how to set my priorities. Like this is more important than whatever work I'm diving into. I get it. A year later, my sister died very suddenly, and then a couple months after that, my dad died after a long illness. So here I am in the biggest and hardest job I'd ever had. And I'm swimming in grief, and I was new to the Northwest, and I didn't have my network of people, and I just broke. I broke. I fell apart. And, but it was also in that time that I met my husband, and we made a plan to merge our lives and move in together, and that eventually meant getting married. But that gave me some freedom. I was able to leave my work in education. I took a year off to do nothing, to just sit and heal and recover. And I started doing yoga. So I was doing a lot of yoga and some mindfulness work. And we had a dog at the time, and I would take her out on long walks. And so that was how I was going to reset and get healthy. And I told myself I wasn't going to think about work. I wasn't even going to think about what I was going to do next for 1 year. I just needed that time. And I thought I was going to be running back to schools, running back to my old career. And I was not. When the time came to start thinking about what do I want to do, I was not ready to go back to school. I was not ready to go back to life in schools. So I started throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what would stick, and started a little consulting practice. And as a part of that, I started a weekly newsletter, which would include a reflection. And I was using that space to tap into old memories, to tap into formative experiences, to just think deeply about how I got to this place of burnout, and how I landed in this place where the career that I was working on for decades, and all of a sudden it wasn't serving me anymore. It wasn't giving me any sort of joy to go to school anymore. That was hard to say. When I woke up that day and I was like not excited to go to work, that was the clue. Okay, I need to get out. Something has shifted. Something is off. Right. So the writing really started in an attempt to kind of process my own grief and my own bafflement at how I had landed in this place. Of course, a year after 2019, while I'm on my self-imposed sabbatical, that's also when 2020 happened, and we saw the pandemic, and Seattle was hit hard and quickly. Like we were the first city in the U.S. that was really hit hard, and we went into quarantine quickly. And the rest of the country was kind of laughing at us, like, "Whoa, what are you freaking out about this thing?" And no, but we were waving our arms and like, "No, really, this is bad. This is bad."
This is
so one by one, cities, states, were impacted and engaged quarantine in different ways. But then, of course, we saw the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and so many others came to light, and it forced a real reckoning in the United States. People who had ignored the history and the racial divides and the animus that seems to be baked into our institutions, right? We couldn't ignore that anymore. And then, of course, we've got an environmental crisis, and then we had a political crisis. And, in the U.S., we're more tribal than we've been in my lifetime. So
right.
In addition to figuring out how did I land here, I also started wondering, how did we all land here? How did we land in this place of total chaos? And how did we land in this moment where, we were using unpredictable and unprecedented, 5 times a day for things that were happening. So how do we get to this point that did we not see this coming? Did we not prepare for this? Have we not made 1,000 movies with this plot? Haven't we prepared ourselves for this? And yet we still wandered into this place as a country, as a culture. So it started as a project to process my own grief and my own transformation. It turned into a bigger reflection about what else was going on in the world and how we all got there. After a couple years of writing, and I was getting, sometimes I get feedback from friends who were following my newsletter, and they're, oh, that's interesting. Oh, I'd never thought about it that way. And oh, I didn't know that about you. And I stepped back and started to see a through line of identity. I was figuring out, how did I become this? Who do I want to be? Who do I want to become? How do I get there? So that through line, I started to see that through a lot of the essays that I'd written, and it kind of stared back at me and said, it's like the essays got together and were like, we want to be a book. And so so I started the project of trying to figure out how to turn it into a book. And then I was really kind of lucky to stumble into collaborating with a local publisher in Seattle, a little independent publisher called Peanut Butter Publishing. And they're wonderful. The editor I worked with, Daniel Harvey, was fantastic. Knowing that I had never done a project like this, knowing that I didn't ever anticipate doing a project like this, but Danielle and the team at Peanut Butter was able to really guide me and help me hone my voice and figure out, what was the story that I wanted to tell, and what were the ways that I could push myself that, I couldn't see it in my own writing, but Danielle was able to lift up a mirror in different ways it was really profound. Nice. And really powerful for me. So that's how we got here. Yeah. I didn't intend to write a book, but it told me it wanted to be put together.
Well, Peanut Butter Publishing is just fun to say. I have to say it twice. Like that. It's worth being with them just to say that, Peanut Butter Publishing.
Truly.
Everyone now is going to try doing it in the background. They're going to say it too. It's fun. It's fun to say. So.
And I had been sending out the manuscript to literary agents and publishing houses and wasn't getting any response. It's a long game. It's a long process. Yeah. And I think anybody who's getting into this, it's worth it signing up for a workshop or getting a preview of how does this industry work, and it's hard to make sense of as an outsider. That process was really fascinating. So I was sitting at a stoplight waiting for the light to change, and I was listening to NPR, and there was a spot for a local sponsor, support from Peanut Butter Publishing, looking for new authors and new voices with manuscripts at any stage in the publishing process. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm looking for a publishing house, and I love peanut butter, so that's a really good sign. And they followed up. So I sent an email saying, I heard your spot on NPR, and hey, what's this all about? And within 12 hours, I had a response, and then the process was underway. So it was it was good timing. And peanut butter. Who knew peanut butter could be so auspicious?
Come on. Right. That's great. So what would have been helpful for you, Bill, to hear on a podcast at the beginning of your journey of writing, not knowing all of this story that we've heard? What would have been helpful for you at the beginning around authorship, writing your book, sharing your story? What could have helped motivate you at the beginning that we could do today to previous Bill?
Yeah. I think two things come to mind. One, collaboration is so helpful. I think when you're writing and you get into your voice and you think nobody's going to hear this right, or nobody can help me articulate this. It was really wonderful to collaborate with people and get the feedback. It's humbling. It's, something I thought was brilliant. And then, somebody, my editor would be like, this seems kind of redundant. I'm like, oh, okay. So it was helpful in keeping the humility hat on, but that collaboration also was helped me hone my voice. So I think I wish I had heard that encouragement earlier. Start getting feedback. There are a lot of people who have writing circles, or they get feedback with small groups of kind of peer critics or peer editors. I wish I had pursued that more assertively. I wish that was a piece of the process, because that was fun. It was fun to let somebody else in and also have somebody else open some doors for me to walk through, instead of having to find the doors all myself. I think the other piece I wish that I had really understood was the timeline and how much patience as a virtue would be central to the process. So it takes a lot longer than I ever anticipated. Not just the writing and the revising and the editing and putting it all together, but then working with a team on layout and working with the actual publication and the printing and shipping timeline. And it's just it's all so far out. And so there were certain points that I would get anxious or I would get kind of antsy about when is this happening? When is it going to arrive? Is it never going to come? But I wish I had somebody saying patience, patience, patience.
Yeah.
It's okay. This is the right timeline. This is how it's happening. This is the right speed. So, and so I think patience is the other thing that I think I wish I had paid. Maybe people are saying that, but I just wasn't paying attention to it enough. Also, maybe a bit of maybe I could have used some more humility at that point in the process too. Just to recognize I'm part of this process now. So I'm gonna keep doing my part, but this is the pace that we're all working on. And so that's been fun to adapt to.
Yeah, that whole thing about hindsight is 2020, and you look back, you're like, oh, now it all makes sense. But in the moment, not everything fits together, or you don't know how this piece fits with this piece, and you're trying to stumble your way through this. And it makes sense when you look in the back rearview mirror, right? So, talk a little bit about how the person closest to you, your husband, how does his support come around you as an author in the process? What does that mean to you?
He's wow. I never expected to meet John. Particularly when someone like John. I never expected to meet someone like John, and I never expected that to happen at such a dark time in my life. And so Jonathan has always been kind of a surprise support. It's like he can read my mind when when I think I've got all the walls up. That's one of those things in marriage you figure out, oh God, you really do know me. Oh no. But then you realize, oh, you really know me, and you're sticking around. Oh, well, it's nice to hear. Yeah,
it's a good combo.
That said, I don't lean on him for editing. I don't lean on him as my first reader. I think there are a lot of people who do that and have that kind of built into their partnership. Helping each other with work and stuff. I think we've always had really clear boundaries that when we want to share something about what we're working on, great and enthusiastic, and we'll help each other, problem solve if we need to, or we'll just laugh about it, or we'll just talk through it. But he never offered, and I never asked him to, be a first reader or an editor or anything like that. And that was actually kind of nice. He was reading things that were coming through my newsletter, and he was reading things. He knew what was going on, and I talked to him about how we were sorting the essays and putting them together, and he helped me see things that I wasn't necessarily seeing, and so he put on his Bill goggles, and he was able to see what I needed to find, and but that was also really great because then when I could finally hand him the book, and then he sat down and read it, and it was fresh, and it was a surprise for him. So during the process. He was very slow in finishing the book, and I was like, "Come on!" I would occasionally just kind of leave the book out, leave it on the counter, I just accidentally left it there as a visual reminder of "Oh yeah, keep reading." So, but when he finally did, we were actually on a plane flying to DC for World Pride a couple weeks ago, and he's like, "I'm gonna finish this on the plane," and he's a very fast reader, but I was still on the plane, okay. So sure enough, plane takes off. He opens the book. He's about a third of the way through it at that point. And I think the announcement came, the pilot made the announcement that the landing, we're preparing for landing and we're starting our descent. And he closed the book, and he turned and gave me this beautiful smile, a little teary.
Come on.
Yeah. Because he also hadn't seen the gratitude, acknowledgments at the back of the book. The last thing I say is thank you to all the people who I felt really shaped me along the way and showed up in these essays in different ways. And he was one of the last people to thank. And so it was a nice way for him to finish that and then see that last thing that I wrote, for him. So that was a really nice moment. Yeah.
There you go.
It's nice to be able to share it with him as a joy and not a burden, I didn't want to burden him with, asking to do something for me, but he's not interested in that. He's busy. He's got his own stuff going on.
Yeah.
But it was a nice way.
About,
It was more of a gift that I could give to him.
I like it. Talk about taking your reading to new heights as you read on the plane. I like that. But to read a book, yeah, thank you. And to read the book with the author sitting beside you, that's not intimidating by any means. And you're a relationship on top of that. That's a big commitment. So well done for the both of you.
I think he's only intimidated by me when I start going into like Virgo organizing party planning mode. That's when he's like, "Oh, God, where should I put this?" Like, oh. Otherwise, I don't think he's intimidated.
There you go. Okay. For the readers, then, let's talk about the book. Let's switch gears from authors to readers. What is your love letter to a reader? First time reading this book, they have a copy of it in their hands. It just arrived at their house. If you could kind of preempt them reading and jump in before they even open the cover, give us your love letter. What is this book? What is this entitled? What is this about? What do you expect the readers to get from this book?
So simple question. That's good.
Yeah, so simple, so easy.
So simple, so direct, so easy. Well, first I say thank you. Like, thank you for even picking up the book. That's, when you put a message out, you put a piece of yourself out into the universe. It's powerful when somebody picks it up. Even if they're going to skim through and they don't think about it for the rest of their lives, like, fine, that's great. The fact that they're picking up the book, so thank you for that. It's an invitation. It's not about me. And I hope that readers recognize that, okay, it's literally all about me. I mean, it's all rooted in my own experiences, but it wasn't about, hey, come get to know me, come celebrate me. I want to invite people into dialogue. Like, I want to hear these stories from other people too. What were the formative experiences that they had? What were the relationships that shaped how they see the world? And what were the identities that they were handed or that they inherited? What were the identities they rejected? What do they adapt? How do they navigate through the world? I don't know that reflection is given such priority, in people's lives, and I think it's worth it to take the space, to make the space and make the time to reflect deeply on how we got here. What are the people? Who are the people? What are the experiences that shaped us? I wanted to offer it as a model, to say, like, hey, this was worth it. It's worth the time. Right. It's worth the effort. It's worth the risk of, opening doors that you closed a long time ago. It's worth returning to those scars. And especially now that we're in a place where what is happening in the world, you wake up in the morning with the headlines. It's like, whoa. Yeah. Where are we? If we're in an unprecedented era, if things are uncertain, that only means that we have an opportunity to recreate the world. And so I think that starts with recreating ourselves. So the choices that we make about what memories we hold on to, what memories we need to heal from, those are the ways that we're going to shape our lives and the world, to come, is taking into consideration our experiences and the people, not only who we have been, but also the people that we want to be. So the book, I put it out there as an invitation to dialogue, as an invitation to reflection, and I hope that maybe someone would stumble across a story that resonates with an experience of theirs, and finds inspiration to go back and say, oh, let me unpack my own stuff, and it's not therapy, it's not self-help, I don't intend to go into any sort of clinical route with this. It's just making time and space to make meaning out of our experiences and use that as a starting point for how we move forward, not just following all the marketing messages, all the external messages that we get about who we're supposed to be or who we should be. Yeah, so that's what I hope. That's what I really hope readers take away from it. The title comes from a chapter about my mom. So the Six to Carry the Casket and One to Say the Mass was one of her quips. So she always had a really good way with words, and she was when she turned 80 years old. Actually, it was just a few months before she died. when she turned 80, we threw a party for her, and the whole family was there, and a lot of friends of the family. And my sisters who organized it went down the list of all the siblings of who's going to give a toast, who's going to give a toast to welcome everybody and to honor mom. So it went down the list, and they didn't want this one to do it, they didn't want that one to do it, and they got to the bottom of the list, and they got to me. They said, "Oh, Bill, yeah, he can do this, yeah." So I was assigned the toast. And instead of telling a story or recounting, moments or accomplishments, I went back to her phrases, her quips, the things that live in her head. So I delivered in my toast the top 10, what I thought were the top 10. And one of my favorites is, I'm youngest of 10 children, and people would be like, "You have how many children? That's wild."
Wow.
And first she would lean in and say, "Well, they're from my husband's first marriage," which was true, but it was enough to. She was the first marriage, so it was enough to kind of deflect the question and confuse people, so she could change topics really easily. But when they noted that we'd have 7 brothers, and that we had 7 brothers and 3 sisters among the 10. People are like, 7 boys? 7 boys? So my mom's response was like, "Well, God gave me 7 sons for a reason. 6 to carry the casket and 1 to say the mass."
Oh.
I mean, how Irish and Catholic do you get? So I joke that she prepared us for her death from the moment we were born. Things like that. So I grew up hearing that, like, oh, I guess I'm the one who's going to say the mass, because the other 6 were definitely not heading to seminary.
Yeah.
But it was like, it was one of the first identities that was handed to me. I never got around to saying the mass, but when I declared a religious studies major in college, and I went to divinity school, and I think my mom was hoping that the prophecy was coming to fruition. like, oh, we're going to get one. The old Irish Catholic thing. You got to have one priest in every family. So I was the closest she got with a campus minister.
There you go.
But it was kind of a funny story to tell. But when I thought back to it, like, oh yeah, that was my first identity, wasn't it? My mom laid that on me. Like, oh, 7th son? Well, the altar is yours.
There you go. I like that. I was just about to ask you the title and explain this to me. That is such a great story, Bill. Like, that's a great connection for the reader too, to go, what is this book? Like, what is this about? And then the extension to the title too, right? Reflections on life, identity, and moving forward. That's really important too. I'm always curious as to why authors pick that subtitle and what that means for us as a reader. So can we kind of go in a little bit more about that part of the title?
Sure. I love unpacking language.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. So
what
talk
do you
about
want to focus on?
The life, the identity, and the moving forward. I think a lot of people listening to this are really going to identify with grief, are going to identify with loss. I'm just curious about why those 3 components to that subtitle. Can you kind of break them down for us, maybe each of them?
Well, before even that one, I think reflections is a very intentional word.
Yeah. Yes.
I use reflection in the sense of John Dewey. Sometimes we think about reflection as like warm and fuzzy opinions or it's emotional expression, and it's really not. John Dewey defined reflection because he saw it as really critical for learning and education. So reflection was supposed to be at the core of American education when John Dewey introduced it to American culture. But for him, reflection is a systematic process. It's a systematic process of making meaning. It happens in interaction with others, whether it's in dialogue or whether it's dialogue with a person in front of you or dialogue with someone who died 300 years ago and they're writing, but it comes in dialogue. It's iterative and it's dialogical that way. It also has to have attitudes of that will lead to growth, wholeheartedness, open-mindedness. So reflection for me is not, just I'm sitting back and telling my stories and isn't this fun? For each of these topics, it was me really engaging as critically and as compassionately as I could to unpack things. It wasn't just telling the story; it was trying to make meaning out of these experiences, because it's that meaning making that you can really build on. And when it comes to life, identity, and moving forward, those are three things that I kept coming back to in these identities. Like, what is my life? What does it mean to live? What does it mean to be fully alive? If we just think of like, oh, life is this static thing, then that would be pretty boring, I think. But I think life is dynamic and living is dynamic. And so that's focusing on, what is it that brings me life? That's what I wanted to capture and explore in this. I've already spoken a little bit about identity, how identity, the through line of identity, is what I first saw that could have turned all these essays into a coherent book. For me, it's a constant exploration of like, who am I? Where did I come from? Who shapes me, and how do I shape myself? And those are all questions of identity and questions of who do I want to be, and where do I find connection with others in the world, and where do I find dissonance, or where do I find myself a target because of my identity? And that's a big piece in the book too. Particularly my queer identity. I'm a gay man, and as I get older, that identity, my being part of the queer community, has become more and more important for me. Not just because I like the people in that community, but because of we require a political presence. We require a social power, and otherwise we get wiped out. Otherwise we are invisible. Otherwise we are degraded. And we're at a critical point now where people are being punished because of their identities, and people don't know each other. People are being harsh with each other because of their identities, projected or assumed. Like we assume a lot of things about each other and then have a fight about it. So that runs a lot through the book. And in terms of moving forward, I'm an optimist. I'm an eternal optimist. And so for me, it wasn't worth just, sitting and making meaning and be like, well, that's done. That's great. I actually wanted to give myself some fuel to keep going. It's how do I live more fully moving forward? How do I know myself and become the person I am while I'm moving forward, or becoming the person I want to be while I'm moving forward? I think a lot of self-help, a lot of books that are tooled toward that. They've got an answer. They have a solution to whatever the problem is, and they put a period on the end. It's like they can punctuate and say, yes, this is the package. For me, it's more like an ellipsis at the end. I don't think I come to a definitive answer. I end the book with a couple of, here are some big insights that I took away just from, what do I see looking back at what I've written. But I don't feel like I've come to a definitive answer. I feel like it's just an ellipsis. It's just, all right, and I've done this reflection. Now what do I do with it? I have to keep moving forward. So that's how I landed on the subtitle. Of course, I have to add a good subtitle. I went to grad school, and when I was in divinity school, it was like a running joke. Like, you can't have a paper without a subtitle. Everything you wrote has to have a serious title, colon, da 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 da. Follow.
Yeah, it's nice. You get to play in the subtitle. I think the title is kind of what it is, and that subtitle is that supportive tissue around the title of your book.
Yeah.
Right. We see it in podcasting. We see it in books. We see it in a bunch of different things. That's just that kind of supportive part.
Yeah.
That brings up the title and gives it clarity as well. Right.
And marketing too. My sister looked up the book on Amazon or something, and it shows you related titles. Oh, you might also be interested in these, but it was all books about funerals, and it was about
oh wow.
So I thought, oh, thank God I put the subtitle on there so people know it's not just about funerals and grief. That grief is part of it, but it's so much. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. Yeah.
Have you ever in the past had a conversation with your mother about you being an author or writing or any of this at all in your past?
Never about authorship or any goals about writing a book or anything like that. When I was in college and grad school, in divinity school, I used to send my papers home. I did a lot of writing. I was majoring in the humanities. I I had a religious studies major and English, philosophy, and Judaic studies minors. So I was doing a lot of thinking and a lot of writing in those days. And then I did a master's in the comparative study of religion. And so it was, again, like exploring, different religious traditions and cultural settings. And most of my focus was around ritual and liturgy. So I would send my papers home. And so, and she'd write back once in a while and and say, this was before email, right? This is how old I am, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I would literally get a big, manila envelope and put a bunch of papers in and put the stamps on, and it would arrive to her about 3 or 4 days later. And then I get a little note back from her saying, well, I don't understand a lot of what you're writing, but you write beautifully. That's the only. That was actually how she would comment when she didn't want to pick a fight. She'd say, well, you write beautifully, but I don't understand a lot of what you're saying. I'm like, oh, I see. Okay, we're going to avoid that argument. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, okay. All right.
But I think a lot of it, too, my own theological thinking was really formed by my mom and her. She had a very practical spirituality, and she was a very devoted but very progressive Catholic. And so it shaped a lot of the lens that I brought to those studies. And so I think there is a little bit of, Mom, please approve me, please give me some affirmation. But it was also trying to keep a dialogue going of like, hey, here's what I've learned from you. Here's what I'm doing with it. And I hope I hear back from you. Kind of the same. Yeah.
Okay.
But no, in terms of, beyond that, in terms of writing, I never did anything that would have invited any sort of feedback on authorship.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if that was part of your past or not. So, yeah. Okay.
I wrote a lot of poetry when I was in high school and college.
There you go.
And then it just stopped. I got to divinity school and I just stopped. It just it was gone. Like, oh, okay. Well,
really?
On to the next. I'm not a multitasker, so I think because I was in grad school and I had to do so much writing, so much prose and so much research. I think I only had so much bandwidth, and that's where it directed. Yeah.
Do you think you'll ever go back to your poetry roots?
Maybe. Sometimes
Yeah.
I'll sit and start scratch out a phrase and think, is it coming back? Is now the time? I'm like, nah, something else comes.
So what's the big difference between poetry and this book? Two different types of writing. Is it a totally different version of you that's a poet and versus being an author?
I think there's for me, the writing that was in this book, to me, it's an outgrowth of dialogue. What I've always done in my work has always been about engaging dialogue. So whether it's, as a teacher or as a campus minister or as an administrator, I always saw that as I'm a facilitator at heart, and I'm in the world to facilitate dialogues. And so for me, the essays that I wrote, it was an attempt to reach out and try to get a conversation going. And likewise with, when the book came together, it feels like, okay, I really want a big dialogue. I want a big conversation with people.
Yeah.
Poetry doesn't invite, I don't think it would come, for me, it wouldn't come from the same sort of instinct. It's, when I'm putting a poem out, it's more of a finished product. It's more of a here's a piece of art for, let's step back and see what this cracks open for us. I love poetry for that. You can put 6 words in a poem, and how those words are juxtaposed, it can just the whole world can crumble in front of you with that. I respect that so much, but I don't have that motivation I don't have that gift to try to do that, I think it's wonderful. My dad was a poet. My dad was an amateur poet, but for him, it was a spiritual exercise. So he would almost every night, sit at, after dinner, he would go sit in, if it was cold, he'd sit in the den. If it was warm, he'd sit out on the porch with a glass of wine and write poems. But most of his were really spiritual and rooted in his religious devotions as well. He wrote a lot to, a lot of his poetry ends with Jesus, I love you, Mary, I love you. He had a great devotion to Mary, Mother of Jesus, in his own practice. So a lot of it, you see a lot of that there. But yeah, I think he started writing earnestly after his mom died. I think it was a way for him to process his grief and to explore his grief, but also it was a way for him to commune with his mom. He had a tough relationship with his parent, with his father in particular, and I think that kept him connected in a beautiful way with his mom.
All right, so are you recreating that with your book?
Isn't that an interesting question? Maybe.
It's interesting.
It's maybe. Yeah. It's not. I mean, God, I named the book after one of my mom's
as I listen.
prized quips. Yeah, I don't deny that.
As I listen to this, I'm kind of putting the pieces together here in real time. And
Yeah.
I think when your parents model something, like your dad writing poetry, as a child, seeing your parents do something and be passionate about something, even if you don't pick it up right away, there's pieces of that just somehow sink into your psyche.
Yeah.
Who you are and become planted in you.
Yeah.
You may not see the fruit of that for years.
Yeah.
But there's something about that memory of him having a glass of wine and writing that caught your attention enough for you to store that memory, right? And how that shows up as an adult for you
Yeah.
is part of your identity, right?
I think you're spot on. I think you're spot on. For me, I was more consciously I knew that I was engaging in family storytelling. In my mom's, my mom was a great storyteller, and for her, it was important to keep telling the stories. And there were stories that we heard 500 times, and sometimes the facts would change a little bit, but the core of the story was always there. But it was that was her way to keep connected to her parents and the rest of the family, the wider family. And with such a big family, it was also how we all knew each other. It was like through the stories we would tell about each other, and when my siblings started having kids, my hope was that they would keep telling the stories to their kids. Some of them have, some of them haven't. And so to me, it's a little piece of family legacy. I don't have kids. I'm never going to have kids. But I think there was a little piece of me that wanted to preserve, what would I be passing on? What are the stories I want my nibblings to hear and pass on that maybe their parents haven't told them about? I think I was more conscious of that in the process of putting the book together, that I was engaging in this storytelling. But I think you are pointing to something deeper in my motivations that maybe I haven't been so precise about. Yeah. I could be tapping into, just picking up what my parents, laid down and moving forward with it. I like that.
The fact that your father wrote from a place of loss, specifically to his mother, with his mother in mind, and now you doing the similar path, feels like this is a new path for you, but it's got footprints on the path already from your father, right? You're just kind of following along, even though it wasn't intentional, maybe in the moment, but someone's already been here before.
Yeah, I will say
comforting.
Too, once the book is published, it doesn't become mine anymore, right? It's not my book anymore. It's out in the universe. It's for anyone else to consume. And that's been a kind of a surprise to see my own, I can detach from this and see it as kind of objective. And I see, so when I can step back and see that, at the same time, I will sit down and reread some of these stories, some of these essays, and I'm weeping because I'm standing with my mom having a conversation again, or I'm sitting with my dad, having a drink. And, so there's something really beautiful that's preserved in there just for me that, other people maybe wouldn't pick up on. But yeah, I think that's a big piece of it for me. It gives me, it's that door of, I don't think it's some sort of magical connection to, to the beyond. But for me, this is what I've been able to preserve and I can keep coming back to. And that's a beautiful way to live with memories,
I looked at the clock while we're talking, Bill, and I'm like, holy cow, this has already been this long already. I just love talking to you and unpacking in real time you as an author and your story. And I said at the beginning, I was really looking forward to this conversation because of how we connected in our little pre-chat and stuff. And this has been it's been exciting to have you here so far. tell everybody about your website, and I do want to wrap up with kind of like a question to end off our conversation here, Bill. But where do we go? How do people connect with you as the author? The book is coming out July 8th, I believe.
Yep.
Can you kind of give us more details, please?
July 8th, and if you happen to be in the Seattle area on July 8th, I'm doing a launch party at Charlie's Queer Books in Fremont.
There you go.
So that's happening. All information about me and about the book is at billhulseman.com, BILLHULSEMAN.com. My site is my professional website. I'm a ritual designer and I do a lot of weddings. So if you go to billhulseman.com and you see a wedding page, like, oh yeah, that's right. And then just go to the menu and pick Bill's book, and that's got all the info about the book and where you can find it and events connected to the book. I'm trying to keep updated there too. I'm also, over the course of June, I've been posting daily a video of me reading a chapter from the third part of the book, Pride, which is all essays about people and places and experiences that helped me shape my queer identity, my gay identity. Mm-hmm. And so I've been reading one chapter a day as my own little way of making Pride personal. But all those videos are also up on my blog, which is also connected on my website. So if you want to, if you like seeing me and hearing my voice and you want to hear some of these stories, with me telling them, that's all up on my blog. So it's all the Make Pride personal posts on my blog on billhulseman.com.
Excellent. And June is Pride Month, and for all those celebrating Pride, congratulations. Enjoy your month and enjoy all of the great celebrations around the community. Your concerns, Bill, we chatted when we did our pre-chat just about what's happening with Pride specifically, and kind of what's happening in the community and the outside lens on the community. Where do you see Pride going in the future? I know here in Canada, Pride event in Toronto, some of the big sponsors for the event have seemed to be backing away from the event. I sense a change, kind of happening in our world around Pride. Where do you see Pride going as a celebration, as an identity? Mm-hmm. And for those outside of the Pride community and that part of the queer community, how do we continue to support our friends and family within the community? Yeah. What kind of give us some things as we wrap up?
Yeah, I think we are at an inflection point for sure. And I think it started around 2019, 2020. 2019 was the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots in New York, which is recognized as sort of the catalyst for the modern queer rights movement. It had been going for a long time and building, but that finally, it just kicked it up to a different level. And so that has really led to all sorts of progress in terms of legal protections, leading all the way up to equal marriage, approved by the Supreme Court, and lots of other dimensions too. But so when the anniversary of Stonewall came around, and then a year later, the anniversary of the first Pride Parade, the 50th anniversary of the first Pride Parade came around. Corporations really got into rainbow branding. You'd walk through the mall in June, and it was just an explosion of tacky rainbows everywhere, and and I think a lot of people were like, "Oh wow, this feels like a lot of support." But on the other hand, it's like, where were the rainbows in March, and where are the rainbows going to be in August? And how many of these companies are just trying to get us to come in and spend? So it didn't feel particularly celebratory. And as an optimist, it was hard to give into the kind of the cynicism of it. This is not great. And that really spurred my own engagement of making Pride personal, of stopping and considering, it's not just about the parties and the parades and the celebrations and the interfaith services and the brunches. Yeah. It's about each of us and our ability to claim space and be the person that we are in our fullness of ourselves without any sort of external impediment. The corporate sponsorship pulling away has been an interesting gauge to see who our friends are in the community. You know,
Yeah.
it was very popular to be queer friendly. To all of a sudden you see queer couples in ads, and they're targeting particular events or particular products to queer communities and doing all this rainbow washing. Well, then the Trump administration comes in and starts attacking diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives.
Hmm.
That's not just about queer folks, but a whole range of programming that are meant to, uplift equity in communities and in businesses and in schools and other communities. So in fear of the administration, or maybe they just thought this was the time to finally like, oh, we don't have to pay for this anymore. So they've disappeared. They've dried up, and it's very interesting. We're all paying very close attention to who has abandoned and who has stuck around, and it's good to know who your friends are. So moving forward, I don't think Pride can sustain on just corporate sponsored parties and parades. It's got to go deeper. We've got to make it personal again. In the queer community, a lot of people like to say Pride started as a riot, referring to Stonewall.
Yeah.
And this is true. I don't like the violent nature of that. I don't think we always have to come at it with such a violent, aggressive
Yeah.
form, but Pride should be a riot. It's a demonstration first, and it's about claiming space, and it's about fighting for equity and equality for all people, not just queer people. So I think and we've got to, each of us has to grapple with that on our own. Each of us has to figure out what that means for us, and then how to propel the community forward really is going to come from that. It's not going to come from corporate sponsorship. It's not going to come from government programming. It's not going to come from even some of the biggest organizations that are actively, fighting for, like Human Rights Campaign is doing really good work. It's not all about, they can't give us, they can't find space in our hearts to be ourselves with courage and with confidence. We've got to do that for ourselves, and I think that's something we can do for each other. So I hope that people start to tell stories like I've tried to do, of tell stories.
Yeah.
Here are the places that I celebrate, that shaped me, that challenged me, that opened my eyes, and like tell me about the places that were world shattering for you. Tell me about the people who opened your eyes. I think that's hopefully where the future of Pride's going to be. And in terms of allies, I think it's well. For many things, I like to look to Madonna. So Madonna is another great one to look for in terms of like how to be a good queer ally. Over the course of her career, Madonna, has always been very outspoken on behalf of queer people and causes. She's been very, very generous in her philanthropy to support people living with HIV and AIDS, and particularly to address the epidemic of AIDS in Africa. She's always been outspoken, but her allyship has changed over time. And when I teach this course on Madonna, and I did a presentation at a corporation a couple years ago for their Pride programming about like Madonna as a model for queer allyship, and we looked at 3 videos that showed the kind of her arc. Right, the first one was Like a Prayer, and if you've seen Like a Prayer, it's revolutionary video at the time. Is very daring to mix like medieval spirituality with modern civil rights history, and it was great. But she is the white savior. Like she is Michelle Pfeiffer standing in front of the classroom, right? She is we're out there dancing in front of burning crosses and in front of the gospel choir. So she starts as the white savior out in front. And that gets people's attention. And it got people's attention. It got people talking, and it got people leaning into uncomfortable territory. And then with Vogue, you see her celebrating the culture of the ballroom in Harlem, the Vols, the legendary children of the ballroom, who are now, that is so ascendant in culture right now, right? So everybody knows about the RuPaul's Drag Race has taken over the world, and drag has become this international phenomenon and lightning rod. But that all started with the ballroom in Harlem, and Madonna really brought the world into the ballroom with Vogue. And in the Vogue video, you see her sharing her stage with the folks from the ballroom. She doesn't try to do their choreography. She does her own kind of style of voguing, and they do their style of voguing. So she's sharing her platform side by side. She's on screen, literally side by side with these folks. So that's kind of like the next phase of like, where do you figure out where I don't need to be the white person out in front anymore. I don't need to be the straight person out in front fighting for these people. Oh yeah, they can
Okay.
tell you themselves. So let me
Yeah.
share my space with you. And then you get to Madam X, her most recent album, and in that the Dark Ballet video is, if you haven't seen it, please watch it. It is an
Please,
extraordinary piece of art. It's a non-linear narrative, but it's about Joan of Arc, and it's a highly stylized film, and it kind of juggles between her trial and her execution, Joan of Arc's trial and execution. And the actor playing Joan of Arc is Mickey Blanco, who is a person of color and a trans performer. Also, Mickey Blanco is a trans activist, and so Mickey Blanco is the real focus of the whole video. And you never see Madonna except for about 4 seconds. You see her in a veil. She's one of the witnesses to the execution, and it kind of shows it zooms in on the faces of these women watching the execution. That's the only time we see Madonna, which to me was like, oh, this is incredible, right? So she's gone from out in front to side by side to just, hey, I opened the door and I'm going home. The place is yours. It like giving that over. So back to the question. It's always worth a discursus into Madonna studies, right? So, but in terms of allyship, I think there's some wisdom there. There are times when a straight person has to be the one speaking up and protecting queer people in your presence because they cannot speak for themselves.
Yeah.
But then there's going to be a point, hopefully, when your queer friends and neighbors and family members will speak for themselves. And it's, you don't need to mansplain for them. You don't need to straight-splain for them. You can let them speak for themselves and stay by their side because they need that moral support. They need that safety of having an ally at their back. And then there are the times to get out of the way. And then, there are the times to let, there are things in, there are bars and, queer spaces where when you see straight people walk into it and you can kind of feel like, ooh, why are you here? It's like, I thought we were safe.
Right.
Like there are times to get out of the way. There are times to say, have a great night. We don't need to invade this space.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's some interesting modeling there in terms of what can queer allies do. And it's like, get a little bracelet that says WWMD, what would Madonna do? And then know when you need to speak up, when you need to stand up for somebody else, when you need to stand by their side, and when you need to get out of the way. And I think there's great wisdom there.
Wow, all that from Madonna. That was completely unexpected.
Sign up for the class.
I love
I've got
this.
so much more.
I love this. Sounds like another book, Bill. I don't know. I'm just putting that out there. That was really well explained. I really like that.
Thanks.
It's a great visual. Bill, thank you so much for doing this. Again, congratulations on the book. We're recording this near the end of June. Book comes out in July. Everyone, when you go buy Bill's book, I want you to leave a great review. I want you to tell people why you love this book so much. Not just great author, great book. That's nice. But more detail so that more people will fall in love with this book. And this book will end up in the right hands, the right time, so that more people will hear and understand the message and find help with their life, their identity, and how they move forward. And if you're dealing with grief in your life, you're dealing with loss, find those inspirational moments where you lean back and remember how these people had such an impact on you, just like for Bill and his family, which brought him to today. Use this as a source for you to find a time to reflect. And again, Bill, I'm just so excited to have you here. Congratulations on the book, and to you and your partner as you navigate life. And you're now this big fancy author strutting around the house. I hope that this brings lots of joy for you and your husband as well. Thank you so much for doing this, Bill.
Thanks, Dave. I so appreciate it. This is a real joy to talk to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. Go and leave Bill a great review. Make sure you buy a copy for yourself and buy one for your friends and family as well. Bill, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. Glad to have you here. I just want to let you know that you can always find out what we're doing live in the moment by going to our YouTube channel. Head over to livingthenextchapter.com. There'll be a link right there. Head over to our YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all the things that all the YouTubers love to say. And in our YouTube channel, a couple things. You're going to get advanced listens. You're going to get the episodes that we're working on in real time. So we record and post daily on our YouTube channel. I'd love for you to give us a follow over there. As well, we're making playlists. We have over 500 episodes. So finding the right episode for you, we're trying to group things into playlists. So if you like children's books, if you like business, you like historical fiction, we're grouping our authors together to make it a little easier for you to find your favorite next author. So head over to livingthenextchapter.com. And again, I'd love to hear from you. Hearing from the listeners of the show is great. And I just want to say thank you for being a part of the podcast family. And I look forward to having you back for the next episode. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate your time and your listen. Take care.